And what you choose to believe to be true, whether it is a true fact or not, will become your reality.
Never underestimate the power of a decision. Welcome, everybody, to the Dream Lifestyle Podcast, your place to build your faith and master your craft. In this conversation, we're going to be talking about how to build mental toughness using your habits. And to have this conversation, I have my sister here, my baby sis, Sarah Groves.
What's up, everybody?
Oh my gosh, she's super excited to be back.
I am. This is going to be really fun. The last time I was here was probably a year ago.
Almost.
Because it was Christmas time.
Yeah, it was Christmas time. So
and now
it's,
are we allowed to say Thanksgiving time?
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving time. It's the season. So
give me your favorite Thanksgiving meal.
Oh man, good question. My favorite Thanksgiving meal.
There are right answers.
I mean, I truly enjoy any of my seafood that I make because I usually make seafood. I do. That's just what I like. I like the seafood. What about you?
But if you have to do traditional.
Oh, if I have to do traditional?
Yeah.
Ham. I really enjoy ham.
That's a good
but it's not the day of though. It's the day after.
The sandwiches.
Oh man. Yeah. That's when I want the mac and cheese and the ham touching on the same plate. That's when it's yeah. What about you?
Put it on a roll. I'm a dressing. I love dressing. I guess stuffing for the Northerners. I'm a Southerner now.
From here too. You're not a Southerner.
Yes, I am.
You have just been visiting for a long time.
Whatever. I love dressing. Have you ever had green bean casserole?
No.
I hadn't either. It's not good.
Well, it doesn't sound good.
No, I don't like casserole.
Doesn't sound good. Anyway, back to the point. We're talking about, building mental toughness using our habits. First of all, why would somebody even care about mental toughness? Why should there are ambitious Christians out here? There are just ambitious individuals there. Why would they even need mental toughness? Why does mental toughness even apply to their life?
Here's what I think. I think right now we have a generation of, this won't be a kind word, but we have a lot of weak-minded people.
Yeah, I was about to say
just like let life happen to them, and they are just like so mundane in their life, and they don't fight for anything that they want. They just expect God to give them everything that's supposed to be theirs. Mm. And I feel like that's so anti-gospel. That's so not what we see. But we have this generation that's like, anything that's mine will like find its way to me.
Yeah, if it's for me, it will be, and all.
Yeah. And I'm like, yes, every good and perfect gift is from God. But what happens if we have to knock on the door for God to open the door for us? Mm. So I just think right now, I'm in a season where I'm learning that my thoughts and my mental habits and the ability for me to believe that I can do things will take me further and will help me accomplish my dreams and help lead me to the promised land that God has for me.
I agree with that. And what I want to pull out of the answer you just gave is the fact that it does take action on our part. And in order for us to even take that action, we do have to have a level of mental toughness.
Yeah.
So that way we're able to, again, just do what's necessary.
Yes.
Right? Like in what you said, it made me think of Matthew 7, where it talks about how we have to seek in order to find. We have to knock and the door will be open.
Yes.
Right? Whereas to your point, today, everyone is on the side of I'm in faith.
Right.
But no works. Even though faith without works is dead. Right. But it does require us to do some work. And even in doing the work, we're going to be able to be building up our, perseverance. We're going to be able to build up our toughness. But it does start mentally. It does start with, and you had mentioned a little bit in the end of your answer, being mindful of your thoughts.
Right. And I also, this also makes me think, you're good. You said Matthew 7. I'm going to say in the Bible, but I think it's the story of Elisha and Elijah where God says, strike the ground. And then if we only strike the ground once and we're like, we got victory. Yeah, you got one victory. But if you kept striking the ground, you would have had many more victories. And I think that has to do with the habits that we create. And it's the habits of even obedience and saying, okay, God asked me to read my Bible, but that's only one victory. How many more victories would you have if you stayed consistent and you kept striking the ground?
I agree with that. And I think even just with that, the habit of consistency.
Yeah.
Just being consistent in something.
Yeah.
I think that's where, I'll reword it like this. Being consistent in something that is productive.
Right.
Because I'm a firm believer that everyone is consistent. You're either consistently good or you're just consistently bad.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
Right? And so it's a matter of, can you just focus on doing one thing that's productive consistently? And that is what ultimately does help build that mental toughness, where it's not even so much it can be described as mental toughness, but it also just builds confidence. Like, to me, mental toughness and confidence are very synonymous.
Yeah.
They're essentially the same thing. If you're able to discipline yourself to do a productive task consistently, whether it's every single day, whether it's you do it once a week, whether you do it twice a week, whatever your rhythm or cadence is based on that activity. But if you can just commit to doing that thing, like one person I know Craig Rochelle talks about it all the time, where he basically he'll try to set up like these very small habits that he'll want to do just for 1 year, and it'll be like, I just want to floss every day for a year, and like that's the only habit he focuses on, right? And now for those of you who might not know who Craig Rochelle is, he's a major pastor over the Life Church, amazing teacher, amazing leader,
also jacked, like
he prioritizes
pretty old and like.
No, he prioritizes his health, right? But he's a perfect example of somebody that just decided, let me just find one thing to be productively consistent at, right? And ultimately that bleeds into other areas of life.
Yeah. And I'll also say, I think when you said focusing on one thing you want to be better at, that is so good, because I think so often we find 25 things that we're bad at, because there's of course 25 things that we're not good at. And we try to just make one stride in every single area. But I'm like, by the time it takes me to take one step in 25 areas, I haven't gone that far.
Yes.
But if I just choose one thing, like flossing, if I'm like, I'm going to floss for this 1 month and see how far I get, and then I've created flossing as a habit. I kind of started doing this. This is so strange, but like maybe 5 months ago, I just decided I needed to make fasting like a normal part of my life. So I just decided to fast one thing a month, mostly just to be like, can I do this? Like, is my flesh able to not have what I want at all times? So 1 month I cut out soda, and now that was 3 months ago, and I don't drink soda anymore. So it wasn't like, oh, I did this for 1 month and now I get to go back to it.
Right back to
that 1 month was like, I actually realized I don't need to do this anymore. So now that's an easy action and an easy habit I'm making, and then I can focus on something else, because I've made like 1 month of, I'm going to focus on this one thing.
Yeah, and people got to find that one thing.
True.
And on not even find it, you can just create that one thing. Like to your point, right? You just said, I'm going to stop drinking soda. Like that wasn't, I'm sure you didn't hear that in your prayer closet.
No.
I'm sure you didn't like have some revelation from heaven to say,
just saw
stop
it on the scale.
Right, but even to that, I think that's a great practical point, whereas like, if you want to find a way to build that mental toughness, just find that one thing. And I love that you brought that up, because all of us have our 25 things that we'd love to be better at. Right. I'd love to be in better shape. I'd love to be eating better. I'd love to, be working better. I'd love to have better relationships. I'd love to, be able to do this when I get home. I'd love to do this, that, and the third, this, that, and the other. But it is about finding just that one thing. And I find that a lot of people do a lot of talking, right? Where let's say, and there's two sides of it, right? There are a lot of people who talk about all the time, these are the things I wish I was doing better. And they talk about it, but they take no action.
Yes.
But then also you have the people that they take the action, but they're still just trying to do one action on all the 25 things as opposed to focusing on the one.
Yes.
Okay,
I have a question. Because I am bad at this. Like if I'm like, I'm waking up early every morning to go work out, I'm letting everybody know. So how do you, I hate the term like grind and silent, but how do you make that like a part of your life where you don't have to broadcast what you're growing in, but you can just like create habits?
See, I think in order to do that, I love that question, you have to tie the action to a deeper sense of purpose.
Ooh, yeah.
And what I mean by that is, if you want to put it out to the world, like I'm going into the gym and everything like that, like there's nothing wrong with it. But ultimately, by doing that, you have to build up your ability to honor a commitment to yourself. And so and a lot of times people will try to speak it to other people because they'll say, oh, well, if other people know it, then I'll do it.
Yeah.
But the truth is, and this is why I don't necessarily all the way agree with some of the people that for their reasoning behind why they procrastinate, because procrastination to me just means you don't understand the value of whatever it is that you're doing. And so when you really understand the value of whatever that habit or task is, using the gym, like you just said, it's only then are you really, and like you really have a deep rooted purpose behind it. Like there's either a deep rooted purpose or there's a deep rooted pain that you want to fix to it. Now you're able to do things like grind and silence because you understand no, I need to go to the gym because like I literally hate the way I look in the morning.
Yeah.
Like from a deep sense, I truly hate the way I look. Or, I'm going to go to the gym and I don't need to tell anybody because I want to actually be able to play with my kids when I'm older.
Right.
Like you got to be able to tie the fruit of that action like to something that really matters to you.
Yes.
And then we can get into actually taking ownership of the goals you set.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people, and this is somewhat of a tangent, but it's important here since we're talking about mental toughness. You need to be able to set goals that you have ownership of. Not just doing things because your parents wanted you to do it. Not just doing it because it's trendy. Not doing it because, well, all my friends are engineers, so I'm just going to be an engineer. Or all my friends are in corporate, so I'm going to be in corporate. No, if God's called you to be an entrepreneur, then you should go be an entrepreneur. If God's called you to be corporate, then be corporate. And have all that, like whatever it is, you got to be able to know where you're supposed to be. And I think that's, to answer your question, like how someone is able to develop the mental thought process to say, okay, I can grind in silence because I'm very clear on the fruit that I want as a result of this action.
Yes. Right now I am, I am trying to figure out my financial situation. That is my striking the ground currently. I made my way into some debt. I'm getting out of said debt, but I think what's helped me the most, it is a praise God, because I've paid off my credit card a couple times now in my life, and it's going to happen again. But right now, I think what is keeping me fixing my eyes towards like a bigger goal isn't just like the student loans. It's not just the credit cards, but I think about 10 years from now when I have kids and I'm like, I can either spend this $20 now on random fast food, random clothes, or in 10 years, I can take my kid to go get ice cream. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, when I think about it like that, there's such a better payoff, because if I'm in debt, I can't afford to do all the things I would love for my family and my life and the legacy I want to lead. But if I'm just like spending all my money frivolously now, I'm not at all keeping like my eye on the prize and keeping a target in mind.
And to even like transform a little bit of what you said, it's about finding something that's bigger than you.
Yeah.
And that's what purpose is. Like I've said this multiple times and I will say it again till I'm blue in the face. Your purpose has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with everyone else. Ooh. And so even with what you just said, you were able to tie.
Wait, that was good. Can you say it again?
Oh, your purpose has nothing to do with you, but it has everything to do with everyone else. Yeah. And so with what you just said, by you, in the moment, it's, okay, do I spend the $20 or do I not? But when you assign purpose to it, when you add purpose into the equation, which in your situation was, I want to be able to buy my kid ice cream. Very subtle, but that's something that matters to you. Mm-hmm. And now you're able to properly look at that singular action under the proper lens, because you're going to make a much better decision. You're going to make a decision for your future, right? And that's the thing. Too many people are living in now and not living in next.
Yeah.
And that ultimately is one of the ways to easily become mentally tough, to easily, grind without necessarily needing people to know you are. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to attach yourself you need to attach yourself to things that are bigger than you.
Right.
Right? Like attach yourself to missions that are bigger than you.
Yeah.
Attach yourself to churches that are bigger than you. Attach yourself to friend groups that are just bigger than you, like visions that are just bigger than you. Because what happens is when you attach yourself to something that's bigger than you, you understand, honestly, it's actually interesting how this happens. You have a better understanding of your role in it when you understand that you're not the main character.
Yeah.
Right? It's not until you have to play a side role that you actually understand this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm not.
Right.
But if you're always in the spotlight, then everyone's just going to be blowing smoke up your butt. Everyone's always going to talk about how great you are.
Yeah.
But that's why that's why submission is so important. Right? Like me, people compliment me all the time about, oh, you're so confident. Oh, you're so confident. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm just a vessel.
Yeah.
Like my one of the things I've been doing recently and very intentionally is like, anytime anyone like compliments me for doing something, helping them out, like I'm like, no, thank God, not me.
All
I'm
glory
just
to God.
Vessel. Like,
I heard this one thing at church. I wasn't there, but it was at a team night, and it was like, we have to stop telling people thank you, and we have to start telling them like, thank God for you.
That's Yeah, that's a new generation.
Neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's a little too deep. That's not necessarily what I be saying when I say that. like you know. But
I heard that and I was like,
I'm like, oh no, tell me thank you. Like yes, like we thank God and thank me because I was still a part of this. But even to my point, like when someone, you know, they'll say, man, like I really thank you so much for helping me, blah blah blah. And I said, well, I appreciate it, but man, I'm just a vessel,
right?
Like, and it's more so like I accept the thank you, but I also let them know, hey, I'm just playing my part. Like I'm not anybody special.
Yes.
I'm just doing what I'm being obedient to the point that you had made earlier, right? Like I'm choosing to be obedient in what I do. Yeah. Which is just helping people grow.
And if we all play our part, then the job gets done.
Absolutely. And that again, the job getting done, that's again something bigger than you.
Yes.
And so that's the easiest way. Like when you're able to train your thoughts, and that's kind of what we've been saying in this conversation so far. When you're able to train your thoughts on just something that's bigger than you at all times, you will find it much easier to grind it out. You will find it much easier to just do the work.
Yeah. And I want to talk about training your thoughts because I think for so many of us, we think, okay, we have this idea and this goal, we write it down, we put it on our wall, and then we're like, oh, and then I'll just live my whole life towards that goal. I read a book. It's called Switch on Your Brain by Dr. Carolyn Leaf. Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard it. Yep.
It is the most fire book. I read it probably 3 years ago and I need to reread it. But it basically talks about all the things that we read in scripture about thoughts, that the brain has been neurologically wired and created by God to be able to do those things, which I think is just incredible. And the whole book is sciencey. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm reading, but I believe it's true.
Yeah.
But it talks about like we make pathways in our brain, either one way or the other, either good or bad. And when we're in a bad pathway, we are able to work our way out of that. Like we don't just have to stay in the mindset of things that are negative or stay in like a broke mindset or stay in a victim mindset, but based on our everyday thoughts and being like, no, I know that I used to believe that, but I'm choosing cognizantly to believe something else. Yes. We can now like create a whole new path and chart our way like back home, back to the way that God designed and created us to think based off of our everyday thinking. Like it's not one big giant moment, but it's a lot of little thoughts of, yeah, I used to think that. And like, I could have thought I can't do that. I'm not good enough, but no, I'm going to choose to believe in this moment. This is who God has created and designed me to be and has called me to a purpose greater than myself, and keeping that mantra in your head every single day, and it'll lead you back to home.
Yeah. I inject everything you just said in my veins because, and the reason why I say that though, is because people underestimate the power of a decision. They underestimate the power of just choosing what to believe and what not to believe. Because belief truly is a choice.
Yeah. And what you choose to believe to be true, whether it is a true fact or not, will become your reality.
Yes.
Which is wild. Oh, I just moved the thing.
That's
it's crazy.
That's good. No, but I think like that's the part of it. It brings up, obviously, we can't bring up mindset and not bring up Romans 12 too. We right?
Quote it for us.
Do not be conformed to this world, but be reformed so that, and allow God to renew your mind.
Yeah.
And what most people don't read on into is where it says, so that way God will reveal his perfect will for your life.
Yes.
Right? So we allow God, like that is probably the mind is the only place, like I'm a nerd over this, so I could talk for like hours on this. The mind is the only place where we actually give God permission to renew us.
Wow.
Because our minds are our responsibility.
Yes.
Right? I talk about this before, where we always have three voices in our head. We always have God's voice, the devil's voice, and then our own thoughts. And if we don't tune our frequency to hear God's voice, we're only going to hear the devil's, just because we're in flesh, right? We're in earthly, fleshly bodies, which is our nature is to sin. But once we start to tune our ear to whatever the word of God says, to your point about, and how you reference the book, you're able to basically choose what you believe. You can recognize, okay, that's a negative pathway, but I can change that, right? When you start discovering that truth, capital T truth, and you just basically choose positive thoughts. You choose thoughts that are aligned with whatever God's telling you, who God is telling you to be, what God is calling you to do. You're going to start seeing your own thoughts change. And that's where that toughness is going to get built up in you. So that way now, even when the devil starts speaking to you, you've built yourself up from consistently, choosing those little thought pathways of, okay, this is what God's telling me to do. I'm going to choose God instead of choosing my flesh. it's not until then are you actually able to find yourself at a place in very little time, if you do it consistently, where you can say, no, I'm mentally tough.
Right. I've been reading Genesis right now. I start all my examples about the Bible. That's just like my wheelhouse.
This is the place for it.
This is the place for it. And I'm reading about Abraham and Lot and how they both have really fruitful land. And it reminds me of what you were talking about with the brain, that like we have our voice, God's voice, and the voice of the enemy. And when Abraham told Lot, hey, you can choose any land you want, Lot chose a land that was next to Sodom and Gomorrah, the voice of the enemy, and a land that was next to Abraham, the voice of God. And depending on where like Lot decided to lean and decided to focus on, that's where he could have lived. So he lived a life that was neighboring both Sodom and Gomorrah and Abraham. And one was like a wicked land and one was a fruitful land blessed by God. But we know the story of Lot, that he ended up choosing to lean with the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that ended up his fate. And then his wife got killed and all these things.
A pillar of salt.
And his life turned out to be unfruitful because instead of leaning towards the neighbor of Abraham, he leaned towards the neighbor of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he had a choice. Like he could have leaned into Abraham and said, hey, I know that we don't have to have the same land, but we still get to be close and be in a relationship. And I can still learn from you and grow from you in a way that honors and pleases God. And I think that has to do with what you're talking about in the mind. Like you have two neighbors and you get to choose which voice and which mental like side you're going to live in and abide in. And if you're not choosing the voice of Abraham and the voice of God, where you're saying, no, I believe the blessing over my life, I believe the promises God placed, and you just choose to live in a life of wickedness where you're like, yeah, I'm not enough. God hasn't provided me with anything. I think it's all a choice. And I think deciding on where you live is just going to be like your own decision.
And that's why, again, I said it earlier, but I want to just say it again.
Hit it.
Never underestimate the power of a decision.
Yes.
Like, I don't care what position you're in. I don't care if you down bad, broke, busted, and disgusted. I don't care if you living high, living good, mansions and all. If you have breath in your lungs, you have a decision in front of you, and you have a decision of, do I go to Abraham or do I go to Sodom and Gomorrah? And it has nothing to do with how much money you got. It has nothing to do with a job. It has nothing to do. What decision is in front of you that is basically the choice between life and death. And Jesus says, choose life. I've come so that way you may choose life.
Yeah.
Right. But God is never going to override our own decisions.
Ooh.
He's never going to.
Yeah.
Because he loves us enough to not do that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think even to advance, but even just double down even more on what we're talking about, right? How we have to make it a habit to obey, make it a habit to, really choose life. We also need to make sure that as someone wants to build mental toughness, to choose excellence as well.
Yeah.
Because, and I was thinking about this, obedience, I believe, and I'm going to keep studying this, but I'm going to just get on a ledge here with this. I believe obedience is only half of the equation. When it comes to God assigning us tasks, I do think that obedience is only half. There's a difference between just being obedient and just doing the job that God called you to do versus doing the job that God called you to do in excellence.
Wow.
Meaning, if I were to be preaching, right? God gave me a word. I got a word from the Lord.
I got a word.
Right? I got a word in the house.
You in the second row, blue shirt.
Right? There's a difference between me going out there and saying, okay, guys, I have a word from the Lord, and the word is be fruitful and multiply and be obedient to his word. Pray every single day. Amen.
Amen.
Technically, I was obedient.
Good word.
Right? Good word. I told the people exactly what you told me to tell them.
Yeah.
Right? But doing it in excellence is fully fleshing out, right? Storytelling, like using the practical skills, the work piece of the faith, to work the faith.
Right.
So that way now I'm actually, again, completing the other half of the puzzle. So I'm being obedient by, okay, I'm delivering this word that God has told me to. God told me to tell people, fill in the blank. But I'm also going to make sure I add excellence to it. I need to make sure that I'm putting together this sermon, and I'm using the sermon as an example, but apply it to wherever it fits. I'm going to add excellence to it to make sure that this is left in perfect condition.
Yeah.
Because, this is so good. When you think about, again, we want God to bless us, but it brings to mind the scripture where it says, God is not going to entrust us with much if we can't be trusted with little.
Right.
And That's why I said being obedient is only half of the equation. Because, for example, what if Noah had built the ark and he didn't build it so that way it actually floated?
Right.
What if he just built like an ark that just looked good?
Yeah.
Right? It didn't actually float.
Right.
Or it had holes in it.
Yeah.
Right? He did the job. Lord, I built the ark.
Yeah. You said wood and I got this wood. I got it. Didn't get the right wood. You know what I mean?
You know, like what if you know, he told Moses to go to Pharaoh, right? And say, let my people go.
Yeah.
Right? It was the way, like the quality.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to the quality in which you're doing things as you're acting in obedience. And you want to make sure that you are making it a habit to do everything in excellence. Because when you do things in excellence, just on a practical side, let's take it a step below the spiritual. When you do things in excellence, you're going to always be challenging yourself to do better.
Yeah.
Right. And again, when you use your best stuff can get better.
Right.
Versus, I mean, I'm pretty good. I can get by.
Yeah.
Right. You're not challenging yourself.
Yes. And when excellence is a habit and when obedience is a habit, then they work together. And that's when we see fruitfulness. Like if we're not in a habit of quickly obeying, we won't know what it's like to be like, okay, God, you're asking me to do this, I'll do it. And then if we can get that down, then we'll only be half right. And then we get the rhythm of, wait, I can do this quickly, but I want to do it the right way. Like I want to do it in a way that's like honoring God. Like I want to build the ark to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. Because I'm doing it for something that's bigger than me.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for something that is way bigger than me. And I think that's the key. Like, and we talked a lot about it all, but even just to kind of sum it up so that way people really understand, if you want to build mental toughness, it's about making it a habit to be obedient to whatever God has called you to do.
Don't cut corners.
Don't cut any corners. And then that's the excellence piece. Make it a habit to not only just be obedient, but make it a habit to do it to the very best of your ability. Give God your best. Work willingly unto the Lord. Not the person that signs your checks. Not the person that tells you what to do. Not the person that is quote unquote above you, right? Not because that's what your audience is telling you to do. Just do your best just because that's what God deserves.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And within that fruitfulness, you're going to see yourself transform into a much tougher being, you're going to live life like Christ.
Right.
Because Christ was mentally tough because he knew the word. Christ was mentally tough because he was obedient to, you know, all that God had called him to do. Because I believe when you really think about, you know, Jesus in the garden, that's like mental toughness
to the max
at its finest.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And when, yeah, because, okay, here's what I think. When your excellence is a habit, then your stamina for it becomes greater. So Jesus. Wait. Oh God. But do you know what I mean?
Say that again. Say that again.
When excellence is your habit, mental toughness becomes greater. Like you can raise the bar, you raise the level. It's like running a marathon. I've never done it, but one day maybe I will. But if I can run a mile great, then I can run 2 miles great, and I can run 3 miles. And then I'm running 26 miles great because I had a measure of excellence for mile 1. And I think when I look at Jesus's life, he was only able to do that in the garden because he was God, but also because he lived a life of excellence and he lived a life of obedience. So that way, when it came to the big things, he was like, take this cup from me. Like, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it because I know that you're good. I know that you have a plan and a purpose for my life.
I've had evidence throughout my entire life that God, you are good. I've had evidence of I'm able to do these things when I do it in this particular way.
Yeah.
Like, and I think people have to grasp that, especially now that we're entering, you know, the last month of the year, and about to enter the new year, right? Where it's like mental toughness is very much required to do whatever it is that God has called you to. Yeah. Because I don't know of any person in the Bible that God called to do anything significant that was comfortable with what they were called to.
Hello.
Like, I tell people that, and I'm going to tell people this at the symposium, where it's like, if you aren't uncomfortable with whatever it is that God called you to, that's not God.
That's not what he called you to do.
Right.
It shouldn't be easy.
It shouldn't be, right? Because God created us to be victors.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're victors, if we are more than conquerors, well, then we got to conquer some stuff.
Yeah.
We got to have victory over some things.
Reminds me of Gideon, how he had to get the army lower because he's like, you might be too confident with an army this big. I need to decrease the number so that way you know it was really me.
Absolutely. And that's where the humility piece falls into place.
Yeah.
Right. Like you need to make sure that you understand your role, and that's the obedience piece, right? When you're obedient, a very subconscious piece of obedience is that humility, right? I'm obedient because I understand my role, because I'm doing something that's way bigger than me, and I'm going to do it in excellence. Yeah. Man, that's good.
Okay, you said this. We have a month left of the year. What is the practical way to live a life of mental toughness towards the end? Like, to get that last bit of juice out, to get the gun going, you know?
I would say find, and I just came up with this framework recently, find one thing, doesn't matter how big, but just something that you are going to commit to, that you are going to do once every single day for 30 days. And then find one thing that you're going to do every 30 days. So you're basically finding 2 activities. Yeah. One activity that you're going to do every single day for 30 days. It can be as big as go to the gym. Yeah. I'm going to eat salads every day. Yeah. Or it could be as small as I'm just going to floss.
That's me. I need to floss.
Right. Like whatever, but you need to pick one activity that you're going to do every single day for 30 days. And then one activity that you're going to do every 30 days. So something you're going to do basically once a month. Yeah. Right. Once a month. I personally suggest self-reflection. Just take time, take you a personal meeting, you know, and just think through life. But to me, that's how someone is able to really foster mental toughness as we enter December.
Because the year's not over.
It's not. No,
don't count yourself out. The year is not over. You know how much you can get done in a month?
Oh, that's a fact.
You can get so much done in a month. So don't be discouraged and like get yourself down and be like, dang, I didn't accomplish any of my goals. Restart them, write it out again, do one thing you can do a day and one thing a month.
That's good. That's sound advice. Well, we appreciate you. I hope that you guys got some value out of this conversation, because we certainly had a blast having it. If you haven't, be sure to check out last week's episode as you prepare for next week's episode. And also share this episode with somebody. Share this episode with somebody that you know needs a little bit of help when it comes to the mental department. Somebody that you know could use a little grit, use a little bit of grind in their life, so that way they can really take action to better.
Be nice life. When you share it, though.
Yeah, I mean, just share. Hey, thought this would be helpful to you where you're in your position in life.
Like, yeah, your life's going downhill. I think you need this.
Yeah, but do it in kindness. But be sure to share it with somebody. But no, truthfully, this was a blast. It's always fun having my sister here with me, talking about real things. But like I said, as you prepare for next week's episode, check out last week's episode, and I will see you next week. Always remember, your dream is possible as long as you're willing to work for it. We'll see you all next week.